Oh, hello, good evening to you. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live Money News Up here at Desawe Kanda. I am Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, the security chiefs of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have ended their two-day meeting in Accra on plans to intervene within that particular realms of restoring constitutional rule in Niger. Have they finally decided to use a military force? We have details of what happened at the close of the meetings today. Also, the special prosecutor touts what he describes as his gains in office 2 years after he was sworn in as the second special prosecutor to fight corruption. We ask if the said gains are worth celebrating. Stay with us. Also in sports this evening, the Saudi Pro League has taken the football world by storm, attracting some of the biggest names in this world of football. We'll look at how this props the league up as potential rivals for European leagues. We have a conversation tonight. Stay with us, as always. We're very interactive. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and Twitter. Let's get talking. Well, let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
Scores of Nigerians residents in Ghana have staged a protest calling for the unconditional release and immediate reinstatement of ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. They lauded the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, for taking a firm stance against a military junta while reaffirming support for military intervention to restore democracy in Niger.
What happened in Niger, we don't like it at all. We need democracy. So far as the Nigerians, they vote to their president. The president is supposed to stay. After 5 years, if they go to vote, everybody that is win, they give the power to him. But it's win, the Nigerian people elect him to come to president for them. Why that these soldiers wake up, they want to spoil our country?
We don't like soldier, this leadership. We are in democracy. I would not like the soldier to stay in our country. They should go back to their place where they are coming from. The soldier people should have to protect the civilians, not to come to sit in the office, V8 and these things, like that.
The UN has warned ECOWAS against unintended adverse impacts of sanctions on Niger, which could stifle humanitarian operations. The UN warns that some measures could cause logistical impediments and additional obstacles. It urges ECOWAS and member states to ensure all sanctions include standing exemptions for humanitarian operations. This follows concerns raised by the African Union and security experts in the sub-region. The 60% target set by the Electoral Commission for the December district-level election is unattainable. That's the position of the Dean of the Local Government Institute, Dr. Frederick Odru. According to him, the unchanged system where district or municipal chief executives are not elected would harm the fortunes of the poll.
Whether the tenure of assembly members begin when they are elected or when they are sworn into office. But for now, we have also boxed ourselves into the situation where we have little room to operate. So these are key concerns that assembly members have brought up, and I think there are genuine issues that going forward we need to address.
The Bola Taxi and Tricycle Association, an informal waste collection group, opposes the Greater Accra Regional Minister's restriction on tricycle operation. General Secretary Max Jumbo questions why the Accra Regional Coordinating Council has not upheld planned activities to streamline motorized tricycle operations before announcing the restrictions.
The regional minister extended the ban from 1st of November 2021 to February 1st, 2022 to make more room for engagement, 1, education, 2, and sensitization. And as we speak now, We've not seen any engagement from the minister's office, no sensitization, no education. So our question still remains, why the intensification of the ban?
Recent events in Niger seem to be positively influencing Ghana's aviation sector, with analysts predicting potential monthly revenues of up to $500,000.
The closure of Niger's airspace means that airlines must avoid that particular airspace, in addition to avoiding Sudan and Libya, which are trouble spots already. So a lot of detours are happening. Airlines flying from, let's say, Europe to West Africa have to make some few detours and then come through Ghana to connect, let's say, Nigeria, some countries in Central Africa and in Southern Africa.
Well, you have more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. Coming up tonight here on Ghana Tonight, the security chiefs of ECOWAS have also ended their two-day meeting in Accra on plans to intervene to restore constitutional rule in Niger. Now, have they finally decided to use the military option? We have details of this because this meeting ended not too long ago, and my colleague Martin Esiedodate and also Komla Kluche were all there. They pitched camp to get the right reactions and words from the Committee of Chiefs of Defense Staff of ECOWAS when they ended their meeting earlier today. And there was a press conference, as a matter of fact, to give the media there an idea of what next. The ECOWAS Commission says it is sending a final delegation to Niger to dialogue with the leaders of the junta for a diplomatic resolution to the coup in that country. Now, the chair of the Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Abdul Fattah Musa, was delivering a presentation of the second day of a meeting amongst the chiefs of defense staff of member states. Said if this final mission fails, they will have no option than to use the military intervention. Take a look.
Like I said, we are not declaring war on Niger. People should be very clear about that. Many people are putting the emphasis on the military option. We have repeated time on end, that all the other options are there. Tomorrow, there is the possibility of an ECOWAS mission going into Niger to continue to pursue the peaceful path, to restoration of constitutional order. So I don't think we must focus on the military aspect. We are ready to resolve it peacefully, but it takes two to tango. We are not going to be the ones knocking on the door when they are slamming the door on us. That is very, very clear, and we are going to make sure we don't accept that. So that option is on the table. The option of sanctions as a tool of pressure is also on the table. And then if all fail, then we have no option but go to the final option, which is the military, intervention. And we hope that it is going to be surgical, it is going to be short-lived, and, to ensure that constitutional order is restored. The planning mission, which started on the 2nd of August, has come to an end today. We've already agreed and fine-tuned what will be required for the intervention, the strategic lift capacity, what the strategic objectives are, equipment needed, commitment of member states, which was very, very, very encouraging. All member states of ECOWAS present here today have all committed elements. They have committed their own equipment. They have committed their own resources to undertake this mission. So I tell you, we are ready to go anytime the order is given. The D-Day is also decided, which we are not going to disclose. There will be no more meetings of the chiefs of defense staff. If there will be, it will be probably in the course of the operation if there is the need to adjust the operation. This is the second extraordinary meeting and the final meeting before deployment.
That's the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Abdul Fattah Musa, there addressing the gathering. Now, so you get a sense in the posture, and that's what we're going to be having an extensive conversation on. And he keeps making the point that for ECOWAS, they're not going to knock at the door because the door keeps being slammed at their faces. So then what next? Because the previous instances of they trying to meet the military leadership in Niger has failed because the military leadership in Niger says, look, we can't trust you, ECOWAS. So is the diplomatic option going to really work in the coming days? Stay with us, we'll get into that shortly. But the United Nations is also raising concerns because they say that the ECOWAS sanctions on Niger is impacting on their humanitarian efforts on the situation in Niger. Take a look at this statement, portions of it that they released earlier. This is the United Nations statement earlier today, raising fundamental concerns about how the ECOWAS sanctions on Niger is impacting on their work. Said that to ensure that the safe, timely and unimpeded movement of humanitarian cargo and personnel in and out of Niger by air and by land will not be impacted by the sanctions. Also, they want some guarantee that the safety of the humanitarian flights and then clarify that all commercial and financial transactions necessary to support the continuation of humanitarian operations in Niger remain permitted and proactively communicated in this particular decision to financial institutions, relevant authorities and entities in the private sector. So there's been some financial sanctions on Niger as well, and that's also, according to the UN, raising that caution that ECOWAS should be wary of the unintended effect of their sanctions on Niger. They talk about maintaining the provisions of utility services as necessary to support humanitarian operations, and also exclude from asset freezes all transactions needed to support the delivery of humanitarian assistance and activities necessary to address basic human needs of the population. Let's spend some time on this. And Mutari Mumuni Mukhtar is Executive Director of the West African Center for Counter-Extremism. He also has been monitoring this crucial meeting, this two-day meeting in Accra that ended today. Mukhtar, thank you so much for joining us here on Hot Ghana Tonight. Now, ECOWAS is saying that all options are still on the table on what to do next with the situation in Niger. But you've just listened to the commissioner there. The language and the posture of the ECOWAS leaders, does it really lend support to the diplomatic options being the most probable option they're going to go with?
From the 30th of July meeting, when ECOWAS first responded to the coup situation of July 26th by the coup leaders, ECOWAS has always mentioned that the military option is the last resort. On the contrary, nearly every engagement ever since seemed to be disproportionately focused on military intervention as a primary tool to engage in Niger. And so what has happened in terms of communications between yesterday and today isn't different. It's still the same kind of communication we have received from ECOWAS since the beginning of their response to the situation in Niger.
Right.
There's a bit of confusion in terms of how ECOWAS is communicating about their approach to Niger. In one breath, they are talking about all options are still on the table, when in actual fact, the only option on the table is the military option. And that is why you hear Ambassador Musa talk about the fact that this is the last engagement, this is the last meeting of ECOWAS defense chiefs on this matter, and that they have determined on a particular date in terms of deployment, and that date is fixed, that date is not changing. And so there's no room for any kind of maneuvering in terms of the details of their plans for engagement, military intervention in Niger. And you know, another platform, you would hear that ECOWAS is still looking at the diplomatic options and engaging in Niger. So it gives a sense of the lack of commitment in terms of goodwill and good faith in dealing with the military leaders in Niger. Of course, you would hear that ECOWAS has made a lot of attempts, at least I've heard about 2 attempts that have been made directly by ECOWAS and its other stakeholders, including the African Union. Those overtures were, declined by the military leadership. But at the same time, we've seen other actors engage with the military leaders, including the clergy in Nigeria. The Chadian president, we've been told, has met with the military leadership. We've been told that they have met with other actors from North Africa. It tells you that they have opened their doors to meet and engage with actors. It's just that this particular actor, ECOWAS, is an actor that they did not seem to be willing to meet because of what I believe is a lack of goodwill and good faith.
You see, that's where, Muftar, that's where the issue is. You made reference to the two attempts that ECOWAS has tried to meet the military leaders in Niger. That has failed. And from the sense we get from our sources on the ground in Niger, they say that the military leadership there says, look, we can't trust ECOWAS because of the earlier posture they had taken about what had happened in Niger. So if you hear the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Abdel Fattah Musa, saying, okay, in the coming days, we will still employ diplomacy. But yet, we know the consistent failure that they have faced in that route of democracy, that's diplomacy. Will anything change in the coming days?
There isn't enough, it appears that there isn't enough goodwill and good faith on the side of ECOWAS, because if your first response, to begin with, generally, security responses are often layered. So depending on the intensity of the threat, you deploy a certain measure of response, you upgrade it depending on the scale of intensity of the threat. And so if in one hole, in one shot, you actually deploy all that, you're talking about diplomatic measures, and you're talking about sanctions, the placing or freezing of assets of the military leaders, closure of borders, imposition of no-fly zone, and you include an element of the threat of use of military intervention. It means that you have escalated the threat to that level and doesn't create goodwill on the part of the military actors to be willing to engage with you. I would have preferred that they left out the military component of, options until they get a response to the first, measures that they have outlined in dealing with Niger, so that you use that actually as a last resort. But if you don't do that and you bundle all them up in one go, it doesn't create goodwill for the military to want to engage. So at the moment, I think we are suffering a situation of a trust deficit. The point I was making is that at the moment, there's a significant element that has been featured in this situation. We had communication in the afternoon, and Ambassador Musa made references to that, announced that they received communication from the military leaders in Niger that they are willing and interested in engaging in negotiations with ECOWAS. That should bring in a fresh element and an exciting element to the conversation. And if this is true, we need to expand that window of diplomacy